You're tuned into the Growth Ceilings podcast, the show for builders, dreamers, and leaders ready to break limits and grow beyond what they thought possible.
Welcome to the Growth Ceilings podcast. I'm your host, Jim Lovelady, professional EOS implementer. EOS is the entrepreneurial operating system. This show is built around real conversations with leaders who have pushed through complexity, learned hard lessons, and have discovered what it takes to build companies that run with clarity and confidence. I'm especially pleased today to introduce my guest, Forrest Derr. Forrest is a fractional chief operations officer and integrator who has spent more than 25 years helping founders turn chaos into structure and stalled businesses into scalable organizations. His background spans tech, telecom, construction, service, distribution, and several other industries. He served as a vice president of operations, integrator, president, and chief operations officer. Today, he works with companies from 2 million to 50 million in revenue that are growing fast and feeling the pressure. Forrest is also the founder of Derr Consulting, co-host of the Fixers and Founders podcast, and creator of Energy, a community of leaders who run their companies on EOS. He's known for bringing people, process, and structure together to help founders get out of the weeds and reclaim their vision. Forrest, that was a long-winded introduction, but I'm pleased to have you here. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for being here. I need to cut that recording and use that to send to prospects. That was great.
It's a pleasure to speak with you, and I want to jump right on in. You describe your work as helping visionaries build real businesses instead of high-paying jobs. When you step into a new engagement, what tells you the founder is stuck in that trap?
Easy question I ask founder is, can you take a vacation? And a lot of them say no. Or can you sit in a meeting for 4 hours without your phone ringing? And a lot of them say no. And so it's interesting to see that founders, many of them, even if they're running on EOS, have built a business and they're trying to be integrator and visionary, and they created a job. That's all they've done is created a job. And so my job is to come in and help them build the structure, build the accountability, and help them to be liberated from their business.
Do you have a particular tool or solution or anything that you've learned with EOS to help pull that apart and help that founder, that owner see the light and understand that perhaps they're doing too much or they're having more of a negative impact than they realize?
Yeah, I love the accountability chart because that is one of the most telling things. When we pull up that accountability chart and they're sitting in 4 seats, that is the eye opener for them, is to realize how much they're doing and how do we need to get them out of those seats. But some of them have built accountability charts and they've been lying to themselves. And so they're not in all the seats that they actually are in. So that accountability chart really helps clarify what are they doing and who's responsible for what, to get them to understand that they need to delegate and get things off of their plate.
Your background spans multiple industries and leadership roles. What experiences shaped your approach to building structure in fast-growing companies?
Yeah, so I started working for a telecom company, and about 3 years in, the company was growing, doing well, but it was very chaotic. The visionary, love him to death, but he would walk around and drop grenades in the office and drop them and run, 5 or 6 of them at a time. And he realized it, which was good, and read the book Traction. And once he read Traction, he walked in my office and literally threw the book at me and said, we got to figure this out. And once I read it and realized what it was, I will say we politely tried to self-implement for 30 days and quit very quickly and hired an implementer. And that was one of the best decisions we ever made, and had an implementer for 4 years. So using EOS to leverage those good business practices really helped build the structure that needs to be had for a founder-led company to scale.
I'll flip this around a little bit. You talk often about bottlenecks and the visionary becoming the problem solver for everybody. What patterns do you see in founders who reach that point?
One of the challenges with founders is that they started the business and it's them in a truck to be the landscaping. I got a landscaping background where I worked with a landscaper visionary, and it was him in a truck 20 years ago that started the business. Well, now he's got 150 employees, but he knows every piece of that business, and therefore he is the Sherpa that everybody looks to answer questions. And so watching the phone calls, watching the walking into the office and asking questions, it really does create that bottleneck to where nothing can happen without his blessing. And so you've got to build that structure so that people have responsibilities. They understand what decisions they can make and what decisions they can't make, and free the founder to let those decisions happen without him.
I'm sure you are familiar and you probably embrace heavily delegate and elevate.
One of my favorites. Yeah.
So you've coached many integrators into their seats. What separates integrators who grow into the role from those who continue to struggle?
The ones that continue to struggle have issues letting go of things, have issues sitting down and delegating their tasks. One of the things that I require an integrator that I work with is they have to do that elevate exercise every quarter. Every quarter, they have to go through that exercise because their role will change and the responsibilities will change. But they've got to get things off of their plate and get things into that love great quadrant. And it's interesting because the integrators that I've seen fail or struggle are the ones who want to hold on to things and just won't let go. The integrators that thrive have positioned themselves to where they're building other leaders rather than just managing leaders. And if they can make that transition to build other leaders, that's the sweet spot where the magic happens.
I mentioned this in the intro. You are the founder of Energy, ENRG, which
Yeah.
stands for the Entrepreneurial Network Resourcing Group. I said that
Yes.
correctly?
Yep.
So you launched Energy to help leaders run their companies on EOS. What gaps did you see that made this group necessary?
So many people traction and try to self implement, which there are a lot of companies who can be successful, right? But they need to have peers to talk to each other, to help each other through that journey. And so what I saw is I identified a gap in the area. And it was so interesting because I thought this is not going to be hard to find other EOS run companies in this area. But I had a hard time finding people. I had to do a lot of promotion on social media saying, hey, if you're running on EOS or thinking about EOS, just show up at this time. But once I got people together, then it just became a wildfire of word of mouth because people would come and sit and they're like, this guy speaks my language. He knows what a rock is. He knows what a issue is. And then I started watching these people sharpen each other. They were helping each other with their VTOs. I've walked into coffee shops in this area and found two companies with their VTOs spread out on the table, helping each other, which has been powerful. But then the other thing that's been awesome is bringing in implementers to talk about certain tools like Delegate Elevate. And people will gravitate to those implementers because they see that there's a way to move faster. So that's been the passion project of mine.
So I'm pleased to share, and I shared this with you in the green room before we started our podcast, and for our audience to understand the impact and the power of energy. I conducted my first energy session this morning. I substituted for one of my colleagues who's also an implementer. He started a chapter here in Naples, Florida. I stepped in. Now, what I observed from the participants, we had existing EOS run companies represented.
Mhm.
We had self implemented EOS run companies, and we had prospects who were just learning how to spell EOS.
Right, right.
And the range of companies actually went from maybe 5, 6, 7 employees in one business to one
Mm,
that had over 100 employees.
yeah.
But to your point, it was the bond with learning and sharing and getting into the tools. We actually went through the accountability chart as a tool teaching this morning, and then we
Mhm,
did an IDS, uh, identify, discuss, and solve. Took them
mhm.
through that and a to-do list and even a scorecard as part of our 90-minute session, and it's quite successful, quite impactful. As I share that with you, give the audience your reaction to what I'm saying to you.
I'm super excited to hear this because I have been pushing, trying to get people to see the value and what this can create. And it's a totally nonprofit entity. It is not, there's no fee to join, there's no fee to come. It's come as you are. It's truly a help first community. But what I have seen in the power of that is I've seen companies transformed into scalable organizations. I've seen founders who had a job and they also just happen to own the business to now be leading the business as a visionary and able to work on the business instead of in the business. And I've got numerous examples of that I've seen in person, and I'm just happy to see that it's spreading across the country.
So Energy's been around for 4 years and you've had quite a bit of success. How many chapters does Energy have today?
Yeah, we're over 66 at last I checked. So,
That's
and that
just
growth,
in the United States, or is that worldwide?
it's worldwide. So it's United States, Hawaii, Mexico, Canada. So I don't know that we're across the pond yet, but I think we're on our way to get over there.
Well, hopefully we add chapter number 67 here in Fort Myers, and you and I are
Yeah,
going to connect after this and talk more about how we get that started. So that's great.
for sure. Yeah.
So, next question for you. Your Fixers and Founders podcast highlights the partnership between visionaries and operators. What have you learned about what makes that partnership healthy?
Yeah. It's been an interesting passion project again to do fixers and founders because that relationship between the integrator and visionary, the fixer and the founder, is really a symbiotic relationship. It's much like a marriage, and I've used that illustration for people that don't understand it and they don't quite get it. But then once they're in that relationship and understand that it is where the visionary is strong, the integrator is weak, and where the integrator is strong, the visionary is weak. They really do sharpen each other and help each other as equals, and that's where I've seen the magic happen. I've definitely seen some VI relationships, visionary integrated relationships that did not go well. And they had to part ways, but they were not a good match for each other. So I know there's lots more visionaries than there are integrators, but I'm working hard to try to find closet integrators, and I'm convinced there are thousands of closet integrators that they just don't even know that what they are yet until they hear the terminology and see it.
I want to take those words back for a moment. I said visionaries and operators. I meant to say integrators. So
That's okay. Yeah.
I stand self-corrected here.
No, that's okay. That's good. You were good.
So, Forrest, in many of your assignments, you move from consulting into interim COO or integrator. When is that shift important, and what changes once you've stepped fully into that seat?
Yeah, it happens when a founder reaches an inflection point. And I'd love to say it was easy enough to say it's a revenue number. It's not a revenue number. It's not a number of people in the business number. It is a unique point for each visionary founder when they get to a point where they just cannot continue to scale the business.
Right.
Sometimes it happens at $1 million, sometimes it's $10 million. But what happens is they realize that they cannot do it alone. They come to a realization that they need help and they need to get help. And once sit in that seat in an interim capacity and help them understand what that role looks like, one of the challenges I typically have is I have to turn them down because they will ask for full time. And it's not me that they're asking for that seat. And so my job, the way I position my business is to help them define that seat and what that VI relationship looks like. Let's go find that integrator. Sometimes it's internal, sometimes it's external. Let's onboard that person and get them up to speed so then you can truly experience Rocket Fuel.
You help many companies extend EOS beyond the leadership team. So why do so many organizations stall at this point, and what unlocks traction across the rest of the business?
Yeah, so implementers do a great job of working with leadership teams and helping them run, get their L10s, get their structure built out and implement EOS. But a lot of times, especially if the company doesn't have an integrator, it's very difficult to get the ops team running on EOS and having effective L10s and the sales team and the marketing and the finance. And so in that integrator seat, that interim integrator seat, that's where I feel like I can excel is going in and getting those teams spun up, working properly, building out the rock structure and building out the accountability chart past the leadership team so that everybody understands their roles and responsibilities.
Is that your observation? A lot of companies stall at the leadership team and don't
Yeah.
go deeper into the organization. And that first thing you mentioned, which is the accountability chart and really defining the roles and the seats in the organization. Had that very conversation during the energy
Yeah.
meeting this morning. There was
Yeah.
questions about, hey, do we do this beyond the leadership team? And I was like, absolutely. And
Yeah.
I always look at the accountability chart from an ownership perspective. I always throw out the question, what are you willing to pay for? So when you're
Yeah.
defining the roles for each seat, right? What are your expectations? What are you willing to pay for as
Yeah.
owner of the business? Or if you've got budget, P&L responsibility as a functional leader, what are you going to carve out for these seats on your team?
Right.
And so it's a deeper conversation and a great one to have internally and otherwise. So really quick, your work in telecom and technology gave you a strong foundation in process, systems, and infrastructure. How
Yeah.
does that shape your approach to operations today?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've had a couple of conversations recently with fellow integrators. Also, sidebar, I have an integrator only meeting that I host locally that I have 11 integrators. We meet once a month. I call it a support group. We kind of cry on each other's shoulders for how mean our visionaries are to us. But we were having a conversation the other day about it. And, one of the things that I see over and over again from a tech perspective is the accountability chart is absolutely important and foundational. It is required. You have to know who does what. And I haven't trademarked this term yet, so nobody to go trademark it on me. I think you have to have a tech ability chart. You need to have a tech stack diagram that shows all the applications and how they're interconnected and what those functions and purposes are. That's one of the first things I do is build out a tech stack. And I find that when I interview the leadership team, everybody has different answers. And there's 3 tools that do the same thing that 3 different people have that we can consolidate. So from a tech operation standpoint, understanding the scope and magnitude of the tech stack, and then figuring out how to keep, kill, combine resources and identify this is our financial software, this is our CRM, this is
Yes.
our billing platform. It's amazing how many people have lack of clarity on tech tools.
What's your prediction around savings? What do you think the technology accountability chart could save a business?
I think it could easily save them 25% of their expenses. I think it's conservative. And I don't start that way of saying, "Hey, let's go save some money." I say, "Let's create clarity in your business." Technology, AI, API integration between apps, it's so foundational to whether a business is gonna be successful that I'm convinced that you've got to have that techability chart, and it's gotta be updated regularly.
This podcast is going to take off like wildfire. It's probably going to become one of our more popular episodes. I wholeheartedly encourage you to run out and get that patent on
Yeah.
technology accountability chart. I'm writing it.
When's this being published? I gotta have a deadline.
All right, Forrest, I want to get you out of here on this. You often help founders reclaim their time and get back into their zone of
Yeah.
genius. What is one shift that creates the biggest impact for them?
Man, getting them to stop answering their phone and letting people make decisions. That's one of the biggest shifts that is foundational to help them work on the business instead of working in the business. And, one of the things that I do with a founder is I force them to take a clarity break and think through what are the things that they're doing and how are they doing them to get that off. And it's a struggle sometimes, even though they've read Traction and they're running on EOS. The rule is you should take a clarity break every week. They usually don't. And forcing them to sit down and take that will give them a heavy reset on what needs to be done.
All right. I said that was the last question. I'm going to give you a bonus question here. And this is probably more selfish than anything else. Based on the perch that you have, you've got a very unique view of EOS and both from a client side and from an implementer side.
Mhm.
As you look at the implementer community, give us your perspective and any kind of anecdotal upside you want to express to the implementer community.
I think the implementer community really needs to look at how we can get EOS in more people's hands and giving back that forward thinking of helping first is really where I think the magic can happen. I've seen it over and over again. And just to plug energy again, I've seen it over and over again when implementers go out there and share EOS in a forum that helps people kind of pull the curtain back and pull the window back. People, especially founders, recognize the importance of what it can do for them.
Yeah, I think we're heavily relying upon the book Traction, which is phenomenal, transformed the way I saw
Yeah.
business operating systems. And in my world, it's one of the main devices for evangelizing, articulating the power of EOS. But now I've learned energy firsthand and going to be diving into that. I see that as a very powerful tool or mechanism to expose EOS to a broader audience and hopefully help people first and be abundant minded and do all the right things for the business community.
And if you're not doing this now, get a client that will be willing to help first and let prospects go in and sit on a real L10. That's a big one too.
Gold. Beautiful for us. This has been a very powerful conversation. You've shown how structure, clarity, and the right operational leadership can free founders from the day to day and help their companies grow with confidence. Your work gives leaders a clearer picture of what it means to build a real business instead of carrying the weight for every decision on their shoulders. For our listeners who want to learn more, you can connect with Forrest on LinkedIn. Visit Derr Consulting, Derr is DERR consulting.com, and subscribe to the Fixers and Founders podcast. I want to thank you for joining me today, Forrest, and thanks to everyone for listening and for being part of the Growth Ceilings community. Until next time, keep growing, keep leading, and keep breaking through. Thank you.
You've been watching the Growth Ceilings podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who's ready to grow.